Think back to when you were young. Do you remember the first pop culture craze that you went nuts for? Well, depending on your age, it might have been following the Beatles 24/7 or buying as many Pokemon cards as you could get your hands on. Perhaps it was, and still is, everything to do with the world of Star Wars or Harry Potter. For many young people today, all the rage is watching online streams of people playing their favorite video games. Some of the most popular platforms for streaming today are YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Whatever creative content you love, whether it's books, movies, music, or video games, being part of a fandom or a fan community makes us feel like we're part of something larger, especially right now when winter seems never-ending and COVID continues on. One writer that's part of this universe is Amy Ratcliffe, the managing editor of Nerdist and author of the book A Kid's Guide to Fandom, exploring fanfic, cosplay, gaming, podcasting, and more in the geek world. Ratcliffe dedicates this new title to all who squee. Yes, that's right, squee.
Squeeze, I feel like a term I picked up when I started really getting into conventions and fandom. That was not a word I knew till I was an adult, even though I had experienced fandom before. And to squeeze is just to be so excited about something that you can't contain it. So I started learning it in the context of, you're just like, I can't even deal with this new Clone Wars episode and what it means, and I'm so excited to discuss it. So I am squeeing over it.
And of course, squeeing is so much more fun when you can do it with people who share your love for the same game, movie, or comic character.
It's a very special moment that I didn't experience till I was a teenager and more into adulthood, when you realize, hey, I'm not alone in having very strong feelings about this book or this game, and I can connect with other people. We can build friendships over it. Maybe we can build clubs over it. You can get involved in transformative fandom, and maybe you do fan art or write fan fiction or make costumes. So we kind of wanted to write it as an introduction to kids to be like, hey, if you're into whatever it is, so are more kids, and you can kind of add this whole other facet to your life if you want to.
Fan fiction, or fanfic for short, are stories written by fans that expand on the original body of work. Here's an example. If you like novelist Jane Austen, you're probably familiar with Pride and Prejudice. The fanfic take on the novel is titled Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. This unique adaptation became a New York Times bestseller and was also turned into a major motion picture.
Fan fiction is wildly popular, especially among, adults as well, but among teenagers too. Write fan fiction around characters they love from TV series or films or books or whatever it is, but put those characters in their own stories. And if you look, there's a couple of websites. Archive of Our Own is a very popular one with just hundreds of thousands of pieces of fan fiction that people share and that is just accessible to the public to read.
Another way that fans express their allegiance is through art. This can take shape in a variety of mediums, such as drawings, comic strips, and even painted clothing depicting popular characters. Liana, who is only using her first name here, is a high school senior in the Chicagoland area and a self-proclaimed master fan of the video game Minecraft. She also follows several streamers who've gained a following from broadcasting their gameplay of Minecraft online. Over the years, she's created several painted hoodies highlighting different scenes or characters in Minecraft. Liana believes that this creative outlet got her through some isolating periods during the pandemic, especially when her school closed and classes went remote for several months.
Me being the very right-brain person I am, I felt very confined in my home, and when I started doing more artist or practice, and just because I really enjoyed it, it definitely took me places and allowed my brain to continuously think about new ideas and new processes and figure out what to do. And especially because I learned hoodie painting from scratch, from fabric painting any kind from scratch. There was no crazy amount of videos to watch in order to do it. You basically just had to learn it by yourself. It definitely allowed me to learn much more and grow as an artist and grow as a person through it, because it allowed me to sort of refocus my emotions and create a world for myself where I could feel safe.
Another popular fandom activity is cosplay. short for costume play, where you dress up as a character you like.
I know a whole bunch of, we talked about Jane Austen earlier. I know a couple of groups who dedicate themselves entirely to making Regency-era ensembles, usually tied to Jane Austen in some way. Then they have balls, and where they go full costume, and you can learn the dances of the era. So that's a form of cosplay. Like, when you're dressing up for Halloween, you're doing a form of cosplay. So it's kind of just a shorthand for dressing up in costume. And some folks, you can go to a comic convention or a pop culture convention, and it is so impressive, the costumes that people, they're not costume designers, they're not prop makers, but they've learned to sew or fabricate functioning wings with a movement. Obviously, no one's flying. But it's just incredibly, the whole impressive side of fandom that has its own, goodness, so many websites with tutorials, so many YouTube videos that show you how to do things or answer questions.
A little geeky? You bet. Ratcliffe says supporting this interest is a great way for parents to bond with their kids or teens. Whether it's cosplay or Pokemon tournaments, if it's something your young one is passionate about, let them do what they love. You can still appreciate the excitement, if not the subject matter.
Just talking with them and being accepting of their fandom is such a big thing. If you're not dismissive of it, and I think it's an important thing for adults to, speak with kids like at a young age to make sure they know stories matter. Stories are never just stories. They can be a lens which to look through the world. They can be safe places for us to escape to, and we can learn from them. So if a kid comes to talk to you about how they can't wait to tell you about Steven Universe or Harry Potter or whatever it is, like, that you don't dismiss that and be like, oh, it's just silly stuff. Like, don't waste your time on that. Being open is really important, and will help your kid. Kind of the goal of all of this, right, is to help a kid feel like they can be their most authentic self.
But what's the difference between fandom and obsession? Ratcliffe says that it's important to be cognizant of the fine line. Even she herself had a moment where she realized her love of Star Wars had taken over too much of her life, and it was time to branch out.
I am a very big Star Wars fan. I've written Star Wars books. I have bookshelves full of Star Wars stories, and there got to a point in the past few years where I just realized, there's a lot of Star Wars fiction that's officially published, and that's like mostly what I was reading. And I'm like, you know what? No, there are so many other books of all kinds, fiction and otherwise, that I could be enjoying, and that maybe everything in my life should not be about this single fandom. Like, that didn't feel good to me. But when it's a kid, I think that's something definitely an adult or an older person in their life kind of does need to keep an eye on. Like, let's make sure, like, this is really good, and maybe they're forming friendships over whatever fandom is, but also have other things in your life that are not just that fandom.
Whether you're young or old, it's never too late to find a community of people who like what you like. However, for minors, Ratcliffe is hesitant to suggest jumping on the internet and connecting with a group of strangers.
A place you can start, or I recommend kids to start, is in their own school through their own maybe clubs. And if they don't really have those kind of programs, whether it's people they're meeting through an AV club or a chess club that might have similar interests. One way is through the library, or if there's a local comic shop or game shop, to kind of ask around. Game shops especially are great for anyone who's interested in tabletop games, because they usually have game nights. So I think it's really about starting in your local community and what you have at your fingertips. And certainly if you're a little older and have access to the internet, working with an adult, to social media is a place I've connected with a lot of my friends in fandom. And certain websites, I learned so much about cosplay and fan fiction and fan art. So there's a wide world on the internet of fandom, as long as you tread it with caution.
Psychology experts say that belonging to a fandom is great for mental health because it uplifts our emotional well-being, and it's fun. The next time your tween wants to describe their favorite Pokemon cards to you, don't roll your eyes and say, "Not now, honey." A little bit of support and encouragement goes a long way towards fostering new passions. Amy Ratcliffe's book, A Kid's Guide to Fandom, is available now online and in bookstores. Learn more about all of our past guests by visiting our website at viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, search Viewpoints Radio on Twitter and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Polly Hansen. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Our studio engineer is Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson. Coming up next week.
I've made more friends through Peloton than any other, I'll call it, institution in my adult life.
The appeal of at-home fitness. Then,
there is no universal single time for anyone to know. What time it is going to depend on everybody's individual location and personal history, how they've been moving around.
The intricacies of time. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.